Hi, everybody. It's 12:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm Max, that's Coborn, and below me is Daim, and it's your MOCA Weekly Town Hall on just an absolutely gray and very scary Thursday in which the entire east coast of the United States is subsumed in wildfire smoke. We're happy to be
And Canada too,
Canada too. Don't forget Canada.
which is fair because it's coming from us. So
I saw a Twitter post this morning that said, Canada, no excuses, stop the smoke. Final warning to Canada, manage your forests to prevent these fires. Which sounds like exactly the thing that someone from America would say, disregarding the fact that we also have forest fires.
I mean, in fairness, there is some truth to that, but let's get into that another time.
Manage your fires so that we can have good air. Renee, how's the air quality in Germany?
Fantastic.
Well, 1 out of 4.
Damn it.
It's so good. They have
come
all
over.
these big windmills everywhere.
Pushing the smoke back into the ocean.
Killing the birds, eh?
An incredible technological achievement that we are all jealous has not been implemented in our Western developed nations. But we are not here to talk about Western developed nations, not directly at least. We're not here to talk about windmills or wildfires. We are here to talk about, at least to start, the man responsible for the image behind Colborne Bell's head. Colborne, can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of what it is we're looking at behind you? I know we've seen it before.
This is Colborne Bell, the 50% off meat manager. Is my face is a rotten carcass wearing the patented MOCA hat.
You know, I actually think that's for reasons that we're going to get into in a sec, that's a great thing to have because we're about to talk about Die with the Most Likes and his new collection. Was it Dying Isn't Everything?
Dying is not enough.
Dying is not enough. Thank you. I was close.
You got the spirit of it.
I appreciate that. I should have done better, but that's neither here nor there. I think it's great, not only conceptually, not only thematically, but also because I think that for starters, before we're going to launch into the normal, takedowns and criticisms of the ecosystem swirling around Die with the Most Likes' new work, it's very clear that this new collection is a really strong step, a new evolution for an artist who I think is working all the time who needs to work within a modality in which he has been pigeonholed for reasons of his own and for reasons elsewhere, with a set of motifs and ideas and a seriousness or lack thereof that I think has been pinned onto him. I thought this collection did a very good job at evolving out of and playing with his own conceptual image. Colborne, you're, I think, the resident Die with the Most Likes fan. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. I don't even know where to begin to unpack it. I've been trading some messages back and forth with him. I think first off, just a massive congratulations to him. It's a fantastic result. I guess it just does that now if you say congratulations. And I thought definitely an evolution in the artistic style. It seemed to be maybe 3 distinct styles. Darker. I thought it was just patently darker, which was a little hard for me personally. I don't know where we want to take this. I thought the art itself was just very, very strong. But there's almost a nihilism problem here that like embracing this is such a mirror to the reality that we're in. And it's manic. It's starting to feel manic in the way that the rise of X Copy was. and maybe it's just it is just the art of the time for this moment. Just as X copy was the art of the time for that moment, that glitchy cyberpunk aesthetic, it's similar in its frenetic capacity, in its sometimes bleak themes. Um, I don't know. Maybe can you go to the Dying Isn't Enough website? We can kind of look at some of these pieces.
Yeah, I wanted to just go through some of these pieces here, but just to mention that obviously this did quite well. It was 75 auctions for one of ones, for 400 total each, which is nothing to shake a stick at.
I mean, we should also consider this is like Glitch Marfa as the gallery model, right? How we've come into representation of the single artist. The artist is the star. Less kind of, it was of course done on transient labs, not with manifolds. So we're seeing just a distinct market evolution.
Is there a separate website, or is this the?
That looks like OpenSea. I think it's just dyingisnotenough.com.
Look at that. You're very smart. Very good. You're very good at knowing websites go work.
Yeah. That was my best skill.
Yeah, so obviously you can see there is, I think the nihilism aspect is really, really clear. There is a childishness, I think, or rather a simplicity to the brushstrokes and the composition that calls to mind Basquiat, also calls to mind X copy. We're looking at like, I don't know, I think I'd say rather like, what's the word, like purposefully juvenile compositions that remind me of like People, where it's like, here's the center of a frame, here's where you're looking at, there's nothing really else going on. There's the motifs of the birds and the balloons. Obviously everyone seems to be, as is Die with the Most Likes kind of MO, people seem to be in kind of a constant state of decomposition. I would bet that the birds have something to do with Twitter, and that this is kind of a I don't know, soul reaching out for connection and unable to find it because all they have are these Twitter thoughts. I don't know. I'm not going to claim any expertise with these pieces or this collection, but I do think they're very good. I think they're very interesting. I think the background's reminiscent of Tijo's work with blue. I think that, yeah, they probably do represent our times, and they are very nihilistic and they are very sad. And I think very much like with X copy, these are interesting because I certainly could not see them going up on anyone's wall. I could not see, I don't know, I think for many, many years there was an assumption that if you were paying a lot for art, it needed to be displayable, and these are so bleak and so kind of disfigured that I have a hard time believing that anybody would actually put this up on in a room and want to look at them for very long, because they are very hard to look at, whether they're self-portraits or whether they are, cartoonish reflections of the people in Dai's orbit is unclear. But okay, I mean, we can talk about the art for a little bit, but I do kind of want to move more into the market dynamics at some point. Daim, you said that you have not really had much familiarity with the Die with the Most Likes. I'm curious, looking at these pieces, what do they make you think?
I mean, I see the appeal. I get what you're saying at the same time, that these are not necessarily, like sort of not above the mental type works, maybe from a pure aesthetic point of view, but there is, I don't know, there's a complex, there's a nuanced complexity to the aesthetic that actually strangely appeals to me. I think the kind of more obscured ones are my favorite. Like, yeah, a bit higher above. Yeah, less so the ones that are like super clear, but yeah. And I think Colborne made a good point that these many of these certainly feel like they're reflective of the mood and the atmosphere of the times we're living through, where effectively everything is fucked, and And we are too, along with everything.
Yeah, I mean, Dai's work I've always felt was comic, and these don't feel comic to me at all. Um, they, I think, move past the point of even tragic comedy. I think these are very, very sad and very kind of tortured pieces. And I'm not saying that Dai is sad or tortured. I don't know him well enough. Friend of the MOCA Live podcast, Dai with the most likes. But yeah, I mean, they remind me of Francis Bacon's Pope images, where like people were kind of being destroyed in real time. It reminds me of Egon Schiele, these like deformed bodies. I would love to know more about Dai's influence with this, but I think that that brings me to the ultimate point here, which is the conversation around these pieces, as always happens. But I think it's important to remind ourselves at times is that there's just not high level conversation around this artistry. There's not really high level conversation being asked of this artistry. And yet I have seen so many people glom onto this conversation, right? Jumping into Dai the Most Likes' comment section, you know, posting a work and saying, oh, this is the best thing I've seen in 5 years, so on and so forth. These vague kind of platitudes about art. And it's been a long time since I think a collection of this size and with this level of success, financial success, has like caught the zeitgeist. But a lot of the same Twitter dynamics are still at play. And I'm wondering if I'm sure you guys have seen that. Does it feel especially cloying and especially kind of pathetic to see people like congratulating Dai with the most likes, people who are just kind of people on Twitter, congratulating Dai with the most likes on his success? It feels very much like people trying to get into an orbit, trying to get a retweet, trying to get a comment, trying to come close to the hands of power. And we see this from little artists and little collectors. We see this from people like Raoul Paul and Roger Dickerman, who are like, hey, anything that's making money, anything that's big time right now, I have to somehow insert myself into. It just seems especially fucking ridiculous and sad now that we've had, you know, this new Twitter algorithm for 3 days. And yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's so funny because so much of that is what the art is exactly about, right? How all these people are slaves to the algorithm, right? This thing is bringing you closer to nowhere, which is wonderful that he can be the creator and distributor of such a message, but also prescient that people attach themselves to it in that way, right? Yeah. And then everybody derives the social clout through these online systems that is derivative of his success, which is so like antithetical to, I think, what the point of the art is saying, which is to like, look what's happening to us. You're like decaying every day. Go out there and create something. And it's well, I think it's just going to be the new era of crypto art, in which it looks much more like contemporary art in the gallery system. And you know, what we have successfully done seemingly is we've created a marketplace. And this was always, you know, the Dada critique is that, well, you know, we're going to create a marketplace, and if we don't have any other principles, it's just going to be a marketplace of stars. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful that somebody like Mark is able to attain the success, but there is some inherent contradiction between the work itself and the medium in which it's displayed. You know, I think there's lamentations that he has to go out and play the character and play the comedian and play the jester, and then give the art, and the art is so antithetical to having to be performative in this way. And what I was sharing with him is, you know, I always feel like I have to be the miser in this situation because everybody online is so performative. But, you know, I grew up on an internet that was almost like inherently violent, right? Where we were coming of age, and, you know, it was like, send lemonparty.org to your friends, send Goatsy to your friends. Like, you had no idea, but then suddenly you were hit with these like just horrendous images, or, you know, download something on Kazaa on the family computer, and it's like rolling the dice. If you're just going to totally wreck everything. And then 10 years later, you get these sanitized places for people to participate, whether it was Facebook or Instagram, where there was such a detachment from the reality and presentation of an opposite. And that's what bothers me about this space so much, and always has, is that there was never any like, let's look and critique the contemporary art world, let's try to build a better system, and we devolve into platitudes of just like GM, like, I'm so honored to have purchased this thing, consumerism, the art as object, which is self-fulfilling, instead of the money used to spend on it. It's there's just a lot happening.
I mean, it is very strange because and Mark, Die with the Most Likes, has been very, I think he's comported himself incredibly well, with the lead up to this collection, the sellout of this collection, really focusing on like gratitude. I don't know much about his personal life, but I think looking at this collection, right, if we are going to make the assumption, which I think is perfectly fair, that all art has biographical components, right? Like, this dude either feels some real shit or has gone through some real shit. Like, this kind of bleak collection does not come out of, this is not the kind of, it doesn't feel to me to be the kind of thing that like artistically is chasing a trend. We know from looking at like 010 that the kinds of art that seem to be getting kind of wider attention or being pushed into wider attention are a little bit safer. They're more kind of like technologically underpinned. Even kind of the Beeple robot dogs thing. Yeah, it was like there's a sarcastic kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of meta-criticism. And I feel like that's kind of what this is being pushed, or what is being pushed kind of into the zeitgeist, as it has been for years, right? This generative art, things that are like, you can really point to like a technical part, or like, some kind of form ambition. So I think that that's quite an easier sell than just kind of like hard digital composition. So this collection does not seem to me to be chasing the zeitgeist. It seems to me to be really painful and really bleak, and that does not seem to at all factor into the conversation around these pieces, at least as I'm seeing them. This does not feel like, yes, we want to congratulate Die with the Most Likes for selling out this collection, but like, maybe we check in on this guy, because he's making some art that is very visceral and very, I don't know, very emotionally devastated.
I mean, I think Mark is okay. I think he's very self-aware.
But the conversation does not reflect that. The conversation, like, we could put any, it's always like some kind of, I've been following Toad Swyback for years. It's so amazing to see him finally get the attention he deserves, yada, 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 with like, some picture or some composition that is uploaded to Twitter. And I feel like we could take any name and any composition and just put that in there, and it would just, it's so formulaic. And I feel like there's very little engagement with the work itself and what it's making people feel, which maybe that's because Twitter, even in its new improved form, is not the best place for that, or doesn't reward that kind of discussion. But I don't know. This doesn't seem like work to like gloat over as like an outside participant. It seems like work to like, it really seems to want us to like reflect and not feel awesome.
I mean, Twitter has always, I think, been, I don't know, like, Twitter is the water we live in as crypto fish, if that even makes sense. And I feel like its impact, even during the best of times, pushing engagement towards low effort and sort of, high impact for questionable reasons kind of stuff, has always been, kind of the riverbed that is easiest to flow through, right? And it's always, I mean, even I frequently question myself when writing my occasional, 2 to 3 hour long to produce, tweet threads that I'm like 95% sure the average person will, not even bother to click, and even those that do will sort of skim through and, not read most of it. Um, yeah, I think I don't know. Twitter in many ways obviously was at one time at least something of a blessing and something of a fertile ground for crypto art, but I feel like at the same time it probably always was like a limiting factor that we are yet to find any good way of even beginning to try to overcome.
I don't want to say that this is all a Twitter thing because I don't actually think that's. I mean, I think it's part of it, but I don't think it's totally accurate. I think we would see the same thing in galleries, right? If there was some collection that was, highly lauded and sold for a lot of money, and this was, some party at a gallery in, Chelsea, there would be hangers on. The guy with the most likes would walk around the room in an orbit of people who were trying to stay as close to him as possible and catch his ear, and people rushing through the crowd and bumping into, old women and children to get a handshake with, the man of the moment. So I don't think it's exactly a new phenomenon. Like this is just a part of celebrity. But I don't know, because we can all see it, and because it really doesn't seem to engage with the work, it feels cloying. I don't think that work like this would succeed in a place like a 010 exhibition. I don't think that people would gather around this at like an Art Basel or at a museum exhibit and say like, wow, like I love this. I think that it is standoffish to people who do not have an inherent interest in digital art or an inherent trust in digital art. I think it goes back to something I've been saying for years, which is one of the problems with digital art is you can't see the brushstrokes. And because you can't actually see physical brushstrokes, it's hard to know how much work an artist put into what they've done. This isn't pointillism where, you can look at a George Seurat painting and be like, oh, he added all of those dots. And so I have a hard time thinking that this is like created for mainstream approval or mainstream appeal. And I guess the question that comes out of that is like, does mainstream approval come out of what? I mean, I know the answer to this in the first place, but like, does mainstream approval come out of the zeitgeist, or does the zeitgeist come out of what is postured as zeitgeist worthy? Does that make sense?
We know that Basel is really just like a what is it? It's for show ponies. It's to trot out the art objects for the rich to feel good, right? And to be cared for and to be, shown and like catered to as like a recognition of their wealth and ability to purchase these objects, right? And the power play that goes into that. This is not really that. In fact, I would say it's very critical of capitalism, and the mundanity of life and the showing up and existing online, and how that really sucks away at our humanity.
I'm reminded a bit of I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, when Claire Silver had released a collection. I think it was 30 works. And it didn't do super well upon launch, that is, it didn't sell out. And she like very vulnerably, like, getting some.
Yeah. She apologized, I think.
Coming to Twitter and saying like, I'm disappointed in myself. I'm disappointed as an artist. I'm sorry to the people who collected this work. That it does not seem to be hitting the zeitgeist in the way that I thought. And I'm not exactly sure how, but I do think that there's a parallel between like those works, which I don't remember as being kind of, I don't think that they had any specific commentary on the ecosystem in which we lived, and those not doing so well. So she comes to Twitter, and because she came to Twitter and was vulnerable, the rest of the collection sold out. There's something to bridge that to here, where we have this collection that is incredibly, incredibly critical of the environment, and to use your parlance, Daim, the water in which we swim. There's something very critical about that, and Dai is incredibly grateful on Twitter and does not seem to need to say anything in order to launch this collection to the stratosphere. And I'm not exactly sure what the point or the meaning is of that dichotomy, but they feel connected to me in a way that, I don't know, maybe, does that resonate with any of you?
Yeah. I mean, I actually think Dai with the most likes like really creates for the art. This is his art. At the end of the day, it is and it isn't a lot of money. I think by any larger contemporary art standards, it's very easy that these pieces could have been $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a piece. It seems to be,
though, with everything else, right? Compared to what else is happening in the space, I think that it is far more economically significant than probably anything but Beeple's Robot Dogs, at least in the last 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's landmark, and I think we're actually going to remember this moment as the start of the next piece of history.
Why do you say that?
Which is almost like, again, like a perfect 4-year cycle, because I think everything changes from here on out. We have none of the previous galleries. I think it's no longer going to be about the idea of, in the beginning, it was the collective, right? The collective weight of all of these artists coming together and adopting the system that propagated the system up and through to societal consciousness, right? There was the Beeple moment. There was kind of the one superstar. There was the free fall in which everything is lost. There's nothing left, right? And then you have to kind of sort through the ashes to figure out what remains. And there's probably a reason the contemporary art world exists as it does today, because that's just the model that works. And that's what's going to happen. There's going to be crypto patrons supporting crypto art. And it's going to be just individual focused, because we already broke through that collective consciousness, and it's great. It's great. I can't hate on it too much, because whatever we thought was possible so long ago, it's great to be at the beginning of something that's going up, and it's hard to free fall and wonder where the bottom is. But this feels like, okay, like we've hit the bottom. And now maybe we can start to find new ground based on this, because this is as dark, as bad as it's going to get.
Do you think there's something about the compositions themselves that speak to that, and the fact that they are resonating with people?
But I also think it says again that like this is working, right? Like there's something here fundamentally that is working. There is a new form of art that is being shared. It is being appreciated. And it's being assigned economic value in a way in which the creator can continue. And even if it's not like the broad collective, even if it is just kind of one by one, that's okay too. And yeah, I mean, I think he has been experiencing these things. He's been experiencing these things for a long time. This, as you said, is like, there's a lot more blood. There's a lot more violence. It's less about kind of like the Easter tones and the religious overtones and like the peeing of the pants, more of the comical symbology. There's like none of that, right? So how that all got stripped out of the work, is I really think it's just like the experience of Midwestern malaise in post-capitalist America, right? Like the slow hum of the data center emerging, like the shaking of the ground that's barely perceptible, but it's perceptible to people that are willing to feel it, and he obviously feels it.
I guess this is always one of my questions in a wider sense, which is like, I think that my most negativistic impulse is to say that like success in the arts or success in, especially in crypto art, is really kind of unrelated to the art itself. There are people who are kind of just chosen at some point, whether it's by an individual or by herd dynamic, given this kind of vaunted place. And I think that I figured out after I think it was Raoul Powell had named his 3 artists that he thought would have historical merit, being like X Copy, I think it was People, and Die with the Most Likes. And it's like, okay, the first 2, it's like you're just gonna say any name that had $1 million sales because that's a great bet. And then Die with the Most Likes I had never seen kind of added to that category, but it seems at some point he was kind of elevated to this group. I think it's very clear that he's been kind of swimming in these waters for quite a while. He had the PFP that I don't quite remember its name. He had the Beef Broth Goes. Always seems to be doing some kind of interesting exploration at Marfa, this collection. So this is not new in any sense, but I always kind of wonder like what came first. Like if you need the kind of like herd dynamic mentality, even just like the tacit, like, yes, there is something here of the kind of collective in order to, I don't know, jump to that level. So I don't know. I mean, I again, the cynic in me says that like it didn't matter what kind of art, what kind of successful art or evocative art Die came out with, because there were 35 one-of-ones of X that had the Most Likes his name on them, and that was just going to be a success no matter what. But then there's a part of me that wonders, given the general tenor of the conversation has been wide-reaching and positive, and there are so many people of different walks of life, big artists, small artists, big collectors, small collectors, whoever, investors, etc., kind of trying to glom onto Die's star. If there is maybe some subconscious feeling that the art is worth our time, attention, investment, etc., even if that's not really being spoken about, which I know isn't a question, but I don't know. I don't know I don't know when the chicken comes before the egg, or vice versa, or really when to tell.
That's interesting.
We have a comment. We have a comment from FK787. Thanks for watching. Said Raoul purchased a one-of-one prior to auctions for 50 ETH, then purchased additional works at auction. These also aren't the first works he's purchased from Die. How do you characterize actual patronage as, quote, a pathetic attempt to insert himself into the current thing? It's a great question. I will say that if I had vast amounts of cash and vast amounts of capital, and I wanted to remain important in the zeitgeist, I would also probably purchase high-priced assets from people who are currently getting their name, thrown into the ether and called masters, called geniuses. I mean, I think someone like Raoul Paul sits in like an interesting position because they are both they are both patron, but also like creator of culture or cultural magnate to some respect. Like someone with that level of economic flexibility and someone with that kind of social stature. I think Cosmo back in the day was very similar. I think Canvas sits in a similar position. It's like the very fact of the price, the very fact of the purchase lends credence and lends importance to the purchase because of who's doing it, because of the amount. And so like, I don't know if it's like a sad and pathetic attempt to remain relevant, but when you have that level of status, you need to deploy funds in this way in order to remain relevant. 50 to someone in that position is me, throwing a tweet at the wall. I don't want to, I don't know anything about Raoul Paul's finances specifically.
But I mean, I think you make a good point, right? Mm-hmm. Like just because it's a large amount of money, it doesn't mean that it's not some, insignificant amount compared to the person who's making the purchase, right? So,
I mean, let's
go ahead.
No, so I think it's really actually important that we look at what happened with Xcopy and Cosimo, right? Because I think it really was Cosimo that sparked a major bull run of one-of-ones in Xcopy after purchasing the right click and save as guy for something like $12 million.
Yeah.
And also maybe even what happened with Beeple, or even what happened with Ferocious. When a patron steps forward almost in front of the artist. I know it gets very difficult for the artist. And, you know, I think after that, it was really, really difficult for Xcopy to just create. And that's maybe what makes me a bit nervous here, is that Dai is an artist that creates so freely and so from himself that that you know, it's,
If I can jump in quickly, like, let's not be naive children here, right? Like, there are no selfless patrons of the arts and crypto art, or Raoul Paul would be the first, right? Like, let's not assume that we can unmarry market dynamics and social influence from these purchasing or these purchases.
well, I think when everything is so transparent in public.
Transparent in public, 100%. We've also been down this road a dozen times, right? People, listen, maybe I'm just made a cynic after 5 years, but people don't make these purchases because they love the art, or they're like, this art is worth, 100 ETH, right? You could go and get a different piece in the collection for 5 ETH. So what is it about, what is worth the 45 ETH here, right? What is worth the extra 45 ETH for a piece that just kind of, I mean, it's not any different in dynamic. It's not any different in how complex it is or the messaging. There has been denoted a value of 45 ETH on something, right? And what is that thing? It's social capital. Raoul Pop, listen, I realize I feel like I'm talking to a person who may not even be in the stream right now, but you are defending this person, right? You are coming to this person's aid, and at least in some respect, and you have a more positive opinion of them as a patron of the arts because of this purchase. That's what you get with the 45 ETH, right? You get the artwork that's going to increase in price, approximate to what was initially paid for it, outside of the rest of the collection, yes. But you're also getting this social capital and this pervasive sense that you are a patron.
I mean, just that your name needs to be associated like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you are in this chat right now and you think that this is a journalistic operation, this is not the New York Times. This is for people who spend a lot of time on Twitter and are telling you what we see. So, yeah, listen, I don't know this person, but I can only go with what I see around me. And I know that this person, when AI was a big thing, or when AI became a big thing, was an AI expert. Before that, they were a metaverse expert. And now they're a Die with the Most Likes expert. And they were an Xcopy expert. And they were a Beeple expert. So
A Renaissance man.
I'm not going into group chats, and I'm not going to, try and get someone on the record. We're in this is interesting. 77. This has never happened before on the stream. So
we're having an async conversation via the chat.
Yeah, listen, feel free to come on, by the way. If you have any interest, we can
anytime.
We can actually talk to each other. But I mean, I think that it depends on the medium in which you're creating. I think that when I write a research report, like when I wrote my essay, The Endless Ceasefire, it was super well sourced. I was not making any strong claims that I couldn't back up. And so a lot of things were left out of that essay because I couldn't find hard and fast evidence of them. I think that we're in a Twitter Spaces, essentially. So there's a little bit less of an impetus on journalistic integrity here because look around you. Look at Colborne's background.
I mean, nobody's getting paid. This is not our job. This is just an exercise in being here and trying to maybe hold some accountability, right? In a system where there's so many incentives to do so many different things, it's nice to be able to just sit and make observations, and they may or may not be grounded in any sort of truth. It's all based on just what people are presenting online and trying to read between the lines a lot of the time.
Yeah, listen, I think I'm a big fan of you, 787. I think that you do a great job at making observations based on what you're seeing in the world around you. And I'm sure, actually, I know this for a fact because of the things that I've written about you. And that these are not always sourced claims. They are sometimes assertions based on the best possible information around you. So yeah, listen, if I'm going to be sued for defamation, probably I think that's small potatoes, but I'm not sure I'd win that case. But if you've come here for corporatized and legally backed research-based assertions, I think you're on the wrong social media app. Maybe, and feel, by the way, if anything you say, we'll respond to. But for the moment, let's jump and talk about this social media app and its new, I guess, what do you want to say, beholdens to actually doing the thing that it is supposed to do, i.e., let you see the tweets of your followers. Referring to Nikita Beer, I believe the head of technology at Twitter.
Well, I don't think they said we get to see the tweets of our followers. It was the tweets of our mutuals.
Yes, we are going,
which is a significantly narrower band of people.
Nikita Beer is the head of product, and I will find the exact tweet so that we can look at it in grave detail. Here it is. Quote, "We're rolling out a small tweak to boost visibility of your posts to your mutuals, i.e. people who follow you back. We noticed this data was missing from the algorithm, and it made your friends appear less in your replies. This resulted in the reply section feeling more like a battleground with people you don't recognize." So, very interesting, because I would argue that that's kind of the whole genesis point of social media, right? The very original intention of Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook back in 2006 when that was released, is like, you're going to follow, you're going to friend someone, you're going to have a mutual connection, and then you are going to be able to see what that person does, thinks, posts, etc. That was also I was not on Twitter in 2007, 8, 9, whenever it was released. I don't know if that's how Twitter was at the beginning, but certainly when I first started using Twitter, I expected to see posts from the people I followed. And I would say that because there's a following section and a For You section by which you can organize your Twitter timeline, that was at least validated by the UI UX. So the fact that that would be a little bit of data was lacking, that seems to be transparently bullshit and speaks more to me to be a result of trying to skate to where the puck is going, i.e. people are not super interested in social media sites in which they are just being fed content, or if they are interested in social media sites in which they're just being fed content, they're going to TikTok and they're not using Twitter. So those are a lot of thoughts. Anybody else have thoughts about this Twitter reversion to its core product?
I mean, it's insane how bad it got, and then suddenly it's just like, we're back. If you can't, it's hard also not to read between the lines on this, of that, they wanted to suddenly feed you a ton of just different information, right? And then as the numbers got worse and worse and worse, well, let's just flip the switch back and show you the information that you actually signed up to see. Because the past year and a half of Twitter has been insufferable, which I also think is very much reflected where we just were in that art.
Yeah. Though I would say the whole mutual thing still feels significant to me, and I don't know, maybe for the reasons you say, Max, perhaps it's for the better. But if before the mutuals flip, we were basically seeing, none of the content we actually wanted, that means that, following people doesn't seem to do much, which, if it really was just a mutual significance flip, then, for an account like the museums, which has, what are we at, followed by 85,000 people or something, but then we follow, I think, about 5,000, and only a subset of those are likely to follow us as well. So that still suggests to me that potentially an account that ought to have some halfway meaningful reach towards potentially 85,000 users probably has a reach more like, like, I don't know, 2,000-3,000, which is still insane. Now, like, we were in such a shitty place, there was nowhere to go but up, and I'm glad that we are going up a little bit, and even I noticed, decidedly more, like crypto art relevant stuff showing up on my timeline, but I don't know. Certainly, as an artist on the platform, if the only people that are gonna get to see what I tweet are people that both follow me and whom I also follow, this doesn't sound like it's necessarily the ideal platform for, like trying to showcase my art. Then, not that it ever was. Of course, it wasn't, but I don't know. Yeah, that's sort of my bit of naysaying while acknowledging the positive shift.
Before I go, I want to say that it's entirely possible that 787 is right. This could 100%. I know I've met Raoul Paul in life. He's a nice guy. It's entirely possible that this is an altruistic act of actual patronage because the work resonates. I totally buy that. So I don't want to discount that reality, is all I'm saying. I think Die With The Likes is a wonderful person worth supporting, and I'm glad that he's getting the support in this way. So, we don't know. It doesn't really make too much sense for us to speculate on a reason why or the intentions of this person.
But I mean, I would also say probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to take our speculations as, gospel truth and, sort of.
We're just here having a good time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna run, you guys. I would encourage you to stay on if you like, but I gotta go.
Colborne, it was a pleasure as always. Thank you very much for being here.
See ya.
You guys want to stay another 10 minutes or so? We can keep talking about Twitter. I can keep arguing with 787, which I'm happy to do. We can mention Cortex if you'd like, Renee, before we get out of here.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a bit about Cortex from Renee.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, Cortex, talk about Renee.
Yeah, I'm wondering
it's possible.
if
I'm going to continue to argue
if we want
in the chat over here, so bear with me.
I'm wondering if we want to like squeeze it in right now, or if we want to do it like as a separate thing.
We can
Especially as we didn't really have the time to explain how like the whole museum library thing, aggregating the voices of the
Fair.
many.
Yeah.
ties
Well,
into
let's
the whole
make
thing.
it
I
a
think it's-
teaser for that upcoming chat and yeah.
Sometime next week, we will have a larger kind of conversation in public about Cortex, this project we've been working on, Renee has been working on for the last year or so, what it is, why it's important.
Cortex and the MOCA library.
Yeah, Cortex, which I'd say the core of the
pretty
MOCA,
tightly coupled.
I think very clearly it is the kind of apex of what we've been trying to do for many years with cultural preservation, in that it kind of allows the community itself to decide what is important based on what's important to them, which is really, I mean, the first line of the MOCA manifesto, off the top of my head, we believe, gosh, sorry, I had it and it just went, I got nervous. We believe the truth
Our mission is to preserve the truth. Common truth is found when many voices
common
are
truth
heard.
is found when many voices are heard. Thank you very much. This is our way of trying to do that. Cortex is a memory layer for all sorts of organizations, teams, businesses. It is the kind of foundational underpinning of the kind of new museum, where we are hoping to create an institution that can be for, in perpetuity, a place where people can come and learn about all the specificities of this movement, all the documentation about what was here, what happened here, the conversations that happened here, the arguments with 787 in the town halls, so that people can 10 years from now, when all of the Twitter posts have died out and there is no real kind of ongoing conversation about what was going on in 2026, 2023, 2021, etc., there can be real answers as to who these artists were, what they were creating, what the context was around them, etc. And we have devised a way to do that, which we think is both really powerful and affordable, and can be basically dispersed into many different organizations, both the one we're creating about crypto art specifically and the underlying open source technology. And we'll be talking next week about how we hope everyone can kind of get involved, adding their documentation, what they think is important, what they've written, what they've seen, what they've recorded, etc., into this knowledge graph that's going to internalize this information, form connections between them, and then we think it can become kind of the de facto research tool, and kind of archival tool for what this movement is going to be, can be updated in perpetuity. So yeah, we released that. We released the website. It's live at cortex.eco, ECO. We'd love for you to play around with it. We'll be launching more tweet threads and explainers and things throughout the next couple of days. We have an article up on our Twitter that kind of goes over what it is, why it is, the technological underpinnings, and a couple of use cases. But we'll be referencing this. We'll be talking about it. We will be trying to get as many of you interested in adding your own histories into it, because the only way that this thing works as a valuable cultural tool is if so many people are participating and all of these relationships are being created within the knowledge graph, that something approaching the truth of the context arises. We're going to be, offering certain kinds of privileges and access to Decos holders and MOCA token holders, which we'll talk about more next week or in the coming weeks. And we'll have demos and such. Renee, anything I missed specifically there?
Very well said. Couldn't have said it better. Yeah, the technology is out. The repository of this knowledge graph stack has been open sourced under Apache 2.0. You can basically deploy it in your home lab. From a technical perspective, it's very interesting and kind of like also into our ethos to democratize the memory layer, because you don't need data center grade hardware to spin up your own Cortex. Like our Cortex is the MOCA library, is a knowledge graph that aggregates all the information, everything, the stories of all the artists into one big traversable graph, which allows any human or agent to ask a question and get the answer, like from this whole huge pile of data we try to aggregate into the museum library. But you can also host this for your small business on consumer grade hardware.
Yeah, or like a
That's
cheap ass $300-$400 mini PC sitting on your desk beside your actual workstation like I do, and it uses surprisingly reasonable amounts of inference. So yeah, it's remarkable. I feel like a lot of people who initially hear about it will assume that it's like data center grade stuff, but unless you're doing data center grade amounts of data ingestion with it, it is absolutely accessible and reasonable for even like a hobbyist use.
You can plug it into your OpenClaw or Hermes agent. Like you could, when you have an access key to the MOCA library, just tell your Hermes agent to install our Cortex, give it your API key that you get from our website as a token holder, and then it knows everything about Web3 and crypto art and a growing amount of stuff as we as a community aggregate more information into it. But you can also tell your OpenClaw agent or Hermes agent to install its own Cortex and build a long-term memory by just submitting daily memory reviews or conversations
or your full session logs.
Cortex. your full session logs. Like there are many ways to use it.
We were talking this morning with the Deadfellas team about the nature of AI, like AI affordability. We are at a period in which AI and compute are being heavily subsidized, probably in a way that like is more extreme than even we can fully understand, because there is a hope similar to Uber streaming services in the 2010s that you're trying to like grow, develop an audience, make that audience rely on you, and then at a certain point raise prices back to what they are properly are. I think we know full well that the electrical grid at the moment does not have the capacity to allow stronger and stronger models to be more and more proliferated, and so that's why we're seeing such an investment in energy, such a strong geopolitical emphasis on oil, renewed construction of nuclear power plants, all of which is to say that we are very fearful and wary of a world in which people are using large frontier models to do really important things, like provide the memory layer for their organizations, their teams, their companies, whatever. And when you do that with a large frontier model with whom you're locked into as your provider, you basically have no escape, because they own all the means of conceptualizing and connecting your data to itself. And we are really big into the open source community, and we're really big into self-sovereignty, as it is one of crypto's very core values. So with this tool, we hope to provide a real alternative for people in what we consider to be the vital task of remembering with AI, and companies being able to remember what they've done, what they've created, where they've been, what's been said to them, what they've said, and do it agnostically without complete reliance, and then the kind of economic fetters that appear when you're using kind of a big locked-in company. So just an additional thing on the end there. Like I said, we'll be talking way more about it in the future. Please go to our Twitter for more information. Please reach out to any of us. But I would say probably not me, but you can reach out to me. I just know the least about this. Yeah, and look at what we've written already on Twitter, and we'll have more written soon, and we'll tell you how you can get involved soon. It's really quite staggering, quite cool, and something we've been really proud to build, and I think a really good use of the funds that we raised from our decos last year. So with that, let's get out of here. Renee, Daim, unless you have any last words.
No, this has been great.
We're good.
Thank you.
Knocked it out of the park. Great. Well, thank you both very much for being here. 787, thank you very much for being in the chat. We've been doing this for a long time now. This is the first time we've ever had I won't call it an argument, I'll call it a critical conversation in real time with the chat. We love the chat functionality, so thanks for doing that. And you've given me a lot to think about, so I will ponder. Your criticisms are not in vain.
And we hope to see you back.
We hope to see you back. Yeah,
come next week.
I will say stupid things again, and I will appreciate you telling me what they are and why they're stupid. So I'm sure we'll meet again. Thank you everyone else for watching, for being here. We'll be back next week, every Thursday, 12 o'clock, most Thursdays, 12 o'clock, town halls, Museum of Crypto Art, Cortex. Thank you.